Hey guys, I have a long one for you today. So grab a cup of coffee or tea or whatever it is you like to drink and get cozy under a blanket because this one is really going to educate you. It's all about decluttering. And I've invited my friend Susan here and she is helping us. She knows how to cut through the crap, literally. Hey everybody, it's Anne, and today we have a really special treat for you. This is my friend Susan. Were we in kindergarten together? I think we've known each other for pretty much since we were babies. Yeah.
Or anyone.
And she's a dear friend.
What? We haven't aged at all.
No, we look the same. Well, we look a little different, but that's anatomy. Actually, I was realizing the other day that it's been 41 years since we graduated from high school.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Thanks.
I know. So
let's get that going out of our minds.
I know. So anyway, okay. So I asked Sue to come on today because she has recently gotten married. And this is a wonderful thing for me because I set them up. Yay.
Yeah, she did.
And they have merged two households together. Now they have how many children? What?
I said we're in the process of.
You're in the process of. But you merged your families in a sense. So you had two sons and Blake had
five
kids. So together now you have seven children plus they get married and it multiplies and
Yes. Yeah. We already have one married, another one's getting married in October, and who knows, but they're all adults now, so
yeah,
it's busy and crazy and good.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So anyway, but that left you guys with two homes.
Yes.
Full of stuff.
Filled with things.
Filled with things. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you have just gone through a decluttering of your one home that is amazing.
Thank you.
And
yes.
You're working on a decluttering of your other home now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically the thought was that unless we, ultimately we would like to have one home, but unless we buy a house that's twice as big as what we were living in individually, our stuff just doesn't fit. So what do we get rid of, and what do we keep? So that's kind of the process that we're going through, and it's very emotional.
Okay, so we want to unpack all of this, and I thought it would be a good time to do this when we're in the middle of this COVID home isolation, because so many people are trying to downsize, simplify, get rid of stuff. There's studies have shown that getting rid of stuff is really valuable for your mental health. And so I wanted to interview you about your process, how you've done this, what's worked, what hasn't worked, emotions that have come up, different things like that. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
So let's start at the beginning. So how did you start this whole process?
Basically, I started this process when my ex-husband died, which sounds pretty awful. But, my two children, who were probably 23 and 25 at the time, needed to go and get rid of, all the contents of the house and, the house itself. And it was simply overwhelming for them. And I realized, I did what I could to help them, but I realized that all of the stuff that I had at my house, if anything should happen to me, would be the same burden on them. And I really didn't want to do that. So I said, you know what, I'm going to start making a concerted effort to simplify, get rid of things, and declutter. So that's where it started 2 years ago.
Okay. All right. So your ex-husband died and you didn't want to leave your kids with a mess.
Right. Because my house was full too. And my house was full from them growing up from them moving out, from them leaving their stuff with me. And then, and then my stuff, I mean, it's amazing. I always tell people you don't get into crazy land on day one. It's one step at a time, and all of a sudden you say, how did I get all this? So, I definitely started to look at it myself too.
Right, right. Wow. That's your kids actually had to go and declutter your husband's things, right?
Right. And he lived in Florida, which is, multiple states away. So it's not as if I could even help.
Right.
But then they brought things home too.
To your house?
To my house. Yeah.
Like what kind of things? What did they bring home?
Matt brought home bags of clothes that Larry wore. And but what I did was I cut them up. I sent them to this company that makes quilts, and I made them each a quilt out of it.
Nice.
But literally I had bags of clothes. What am I going to do with them? Other than donate them. But that's what I did with that. So that was kind of a nice thing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I realized through this whole process as well. If you have time, you can make good decisions as to where you want things to go and, how people can use things, because people can, use a lot of things that I don't feel is valuable and I don't want anymore, and it's just taking up space. But just finding them and, helping that process go along, but you need time to do it.
Right. So when they brought the clothes home, they weren't thinking Mom will have a quilt made, were they?
No, I don't think so.
What were they thinking?
I don't know what they're thinking. And I wasn't really thinking either, because you sit there with bags of clothes, and I kept saying, what do you want to do with these? Do you want to keep these? Do you want these for you? And, and that's one thing I also find, with all of our children, sometimes they want to keep it, but they don't necessarily want them to keep it. They want me to keep it, which is a totally different thing. And again, it's emotional, and you're dealing with all these people, and sometimes it's not like, it's not necessarily objective. Blake will point out to me, why do you have that, Sue? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, that's where we used to mark the little, how tall they were when they were little kids. And he's like, do you think Ben would want that when he's a grown up? I'm like, no, I don't. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? So our stuff tends to be emotional. So it's going through that process and figuring out, what can I get rid of? What do I need to hold on for now? What do I recognize that I should probably get to a point where I can get rid of it? And what can I repurpose? The quilt was a great thing. They both love it. It's a great reminder of their dad. So those kinds of things too.
Interesting. So let's talk more about this emotional attachment thing, because we get emotionally attached to such odd things, don't we?
I know. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
No, like maybe it's some place that you went and you have good memories of it. Sometimes we hold on to things that actually give us bad memories. Like we get this feeling when we look at it, but we still hold on to it.
Right.
I don't know why. Yeah.
Yeah. Or things that, I have things in my house that I would never have chosen for myself. Mm-hmm. However, I might have been given it as a gift, from my parents, or, I have a drawer, like where I have some, tools. And it's because every time my parents would come over, they'd say, Sue, you have nothing. You don't have a hammer. You don't have a, screwdriver. You have nothing in this house to do practical. And they would bring me some. Well, I must have 20 things in my drawer right now. Oh. And I say, oh, yeah, but my dad brought me that. Uh-huh.
Well, I would say right now, hold on to the tools because they come in handy.
do. And I do use them more often now than I ever did. But
Right, right. If your dad and mom aren't doing your projects anymore, you might just need those tools.
exactly.
Yeah,
And that's exactly what's happened.
yeah, yeah.
I'm doing them myself, so
Right,
it's like,
right, right.
unless you want to hire somebody for all your projects, you need that stuff.
So let's talk a little bit about. I found this interesting. We were raised by people who lived through the Depression as adults, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so that was very much a saving mentality. You save and reuse all your plastic bags. So you're thrifty. You save everything. You never know when you might need this. So
Right.
you just save it and put it in your attic or put it in your basement, and little by little, and you have a junk drawer and everything gets saved in there because I might need 25 rubber bands at one point or another, right? And you just save things. And then now we have a generation of kids under us, the young adults, who don't want clutter. They want
Right.
experiences and they don't want
Right.
stuff, right?
Right. Right.
All right. So how do we bridge that?
Well, I think for, me and with this whole process, again, I'll ask them if they want certain things.
Hmm.
But when they tell me they don't, and, sometimes I find it frustrating. So, for example, my son moves out and he buys a new desk. Well, I have 3 really expensive desks sitting in my house here. And I'm saying, Matt, why don't you take one of these?
Right. And
But
he
he doesn't
says,
want. He wants, he wanted what he wanted, which and on a certain level, I totally get that. But does he understand? I'm saving this for him, and I spent a lot of money on this. And, again, it's like, yes, I know I could give it away in about 5 minutes,
hmm,
but really, you
hmm,
know, what is that? But they don't want it. And so
hmm.
I think that we need to really come to grips with the fact that they don't want it and
Wow.
the fact that we're going to have to, let it go in many instances. Maybe, other people's children are different, but they don't want it.
Yeah.
And so, if I want it for me, that's one thing. But to keep it for them, I've learned is ridiculous.
Right.
There's also like low-hanging fruit, um, and those are types of things like what I always do is I group things together. I
Okay.
group like things together, whether it's, shampoo or soap or, it could be scissors. And, but I put them all together. And the reason I put them all together is because over time, what will happen is, if I don't put them in the same spot, I think I don't have it. And then I buy another one. And right now I can tell you I have 9 scissors. And that's just that one small little example.
Uh-huh.
You know? So it's like, even if I gave one to each of my children, I still have more than, and so, it makes me, go through and say, do I want this? If I want it, am I going to use it? If I'm not going to use it, I got to get rid of it.
Right.
Because all it's doing is taking up space, even if it doesn't, from a practical perspective, from our upbringing perspective,
Right.
I'm like, it just takes up space.
Right. Right. So, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. I was thinking of something when you were talking about the desk. I was thinking of you have an emotional attachment to your emotion of buying this desk for your son. That's your
Right.
emotional attachment. You have
Right.
memories of, oh, I went in the store and I paid this money to buy this beautiful desk that I would pass down to my son, right?
Right. Well, and not even passed down, but he used it when he was going to school, when he
Uh-huh.
was living here, and it was a good it was a desk. It's not like I went out and bought a $25 desk or, went out on, Facebook Marketplace, which is what I do now.
Right.
Um, but I went and spent a lot of money on it, and
Yeah.
they don't see I mean, someday they might,
Yeah.
but it might be 20 years from now.
Right. Right. So, okay, so we have another thing at play here. So you have been decluttering your husband's house, right?
Yeah, I find
With
that
his
much
five
easier.
kids. What? What?
I find that much easier.
You find that easier. Okay, so
Yeah,
tell me
because I
about
don't
that.
have an emotional attachment to things.
Right.
You know, for me, I have to ask questions because I don't know. I see, like for example, this dish towel. It means nothing to me. I'm saying, why do we keep this? But for them, it could be attached to, their mom.
Right.
So, and again, like, so I need to be careful with regard to what are we getting rid of? Is emotional attachment, and it doesn't matter the reason why or whatever,
Yeah.
but like, and if not, then how can we rehome this and or repurpose it? I'll paint things. I give away a lot on Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
Things that you know nobody has the attachment to it, but it just takes up space. So
Right. 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 So then you're in a whole dialogue with a whole bunch of people
yes, I
because
know.
one of those six other people may have an emotional attachment to any assorted one of these things, right?
Right, absolutely.
And so
Right,
then you have to say, okay, does this mean anything to you? If it does, you take it, right? Because it can't stay here, right? Because this is the
right,
whole other problem of the
right,
children leaving the home and leaving all their stuff at home. That and a lot of times our kids don't
right.
have a very big place to live, and they say, I don't have room to store that, but I
Exactly.
want it. How do you deal with that?
Um, I mean, I try to accommodate what I can.
Hmm.
So downstairs, for example, I have a keyboard um, that is Matt's, and he's like, he goes, I want it. He goes, but I don't have a place for it now. And so my response is, okay, but like if we were to get to that point where we want to sell one or the other house, that's going to push the issue. Until then, all right, let's get
Right.
rid of the thing. There's so much that I don't care what house you live in, there's so much that you can focus on, other stuff and still make a lot of progress.
Okay.
Um, so I don't need to do all of that now, but they know it's coming.
They've been
So,
forewarned.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it is. It's like, all right, so I got rid of 17 photo albums, which I know would probably, but I scanned all the pictures.
Okay.
And, even going through 17 photo albums and scanning all the pictures, it was emotional for me,
Hmm.
because it was like I was going through my life.
Right.
I'm like, whoa,
Yeah. Yeah.
things that, you're just like, yeah, so,
Wow. I remember when my dad died, he had 16,000 slides.
yeah,
And
right,
I scanned every single one of them in. I didn't
right,
scan the ones in that were like scenery, because it was like,
right,
I don't want the
right.
scenery ones. But all the people I scanned in. And yeah, it was like going through my whole life. And then now we
It's
have them
emotional.
all. Yeah, it is very emotional, of course, especially because he had just died, so it was like even more emotional.
Right,
But it was interesting to me because then it was like, so now what do I do with the pictures? So what did you
right.
do with the pictures?
So Matt has uploaded them to a site, a cloud, wherever, and he needed to crop them, and so he's still in the process of doing that.
Okay.
But then he's going to make it available to, everyone,
Okay. All
because
right.
there's pictures in there that his aunts and uncles would be interested in, his cousins,
Right.
I mean, because it's all family type pictures. So,
Right.
there's a lot of people that might be interested in those. So that will help make those available to, not only his brother, but to others as well. Why? What did you do with yours?
I used them for my art project thesis for my master's degree. I used a lot of them for that. I went through and I think most of my time I used them for that, but I think it was also for me cathartic, and it was a grief response. Like I think my master's degree actually was working through my grief.
Right.
So that's very interesting. Now they show up in my brother's blog posts sometimes, or on
Okay.
his
Sure.
YouTube, and they show up through family chats all the time. They come and go. And I also made a website that of all of my dad's pictures from, because he was a pastor, so I made the website of his pictures from the church, and then anyone in the church could go to them. And so the whole community, really, not, anyone in Patterson could go and look at them, and
Right.
they could see themselves as
Right.
kids, and
Right.
that was really special. Yeah.
Right. Because they actually get much more use because when they're in a photo album, and that was also what they brought home from Florida. They brought home, 14 or 15 photo albums. And back then, we didn't make one photo. We made three, for each set of grandparents. So I'm like wading through, like, you can't imagine how many thousands of pictures. I scanned 1,600, but I mean, there was probably, two or three times that
Right.
to go through. So, again, that's very time consuming, but at the end, they're going to have something, like you said, that they're going to be able to use multiple ways by multiple people. And it will, definitely, rather than sucking up all this space in their house.
Hmm.
But again, you need time.
A lot of time. And then did you throw those original pictures away?
I did. I did.
That's
I did.
scary. I think a lot of people can't do that.
I had issues with it, but I was
Yeah.
like, literally, I had like bins filled with pictures
Yeah.
at the end of it, and once it was done, I didn't regret it at all. And the fact that now I know it's up on like a cloud, and fire can't destroy it, and like, so there's a lot of benefits. So I kind of try to focus on that, but it's just a piece of paper at the end of the day, right?
You're right. And how often haven't you gone into an antique store and seen a bunch of old family pictures in there?
Right.
You think, did the whole family die out? Nobody knows those people anymore. How did they end up in there?
Right. Right.
Valued pictures.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas now we're able to, like, even, put, information with regard to this is your great great grandma, like, and, where that information, like you said, would just die out,
Right.
because people wouldn't know who they are anymore.
Yeah.
So that enables us to do that too. So.
That's really good. That actually helps me, because I have trunks and trunks of pictures, bins and bins and trunks, and they're all scanned in, most of them, but I still can't get rid of the picture. I don't think I'd get rid of the pictures that are really antiques,
Right.
of the great great
Yeah.
grandparents. They sit on my wall. They're valuable, but those snapshots, the ones like we have of school where we're missing heads or we're all blurry, but we kept the picture anyway, right?
Well, yeah, you didn't know whether a picture was good or not until you got it back in the mail. So, I mean, you could have a whole roll of garbage and you wouldn't have any idea. But we still kept it and put it in our photo albums. I'm like, why would we have even done this?
Because it marked the memory of the situation, because we didn't
Yeah,
have a good picture of it, right? But yeah, it's true. It's so nice now. You got it on your camera. But
I know.
that's another thing though. We're all losing our pictures because they're on our cameras, and then our cameras die, and sometimes they don't transfer over to the next, or we don't have enough room on our iCloud, or we don't know how to do it and we lose pictures. So that's another problem too.
Well, we have to figure that part out. But
We do.
yes.
We do. But that's a different kind of clutter. That's digital clutter. And we're not dealing with digital clutter today because we have enough physical clutter. Okay. So that was
Okay.
really a good tip. I like that tip. All right. So let's start with well, we're not starting, but let's continue with your whole process of you put everything together, like things, like all the scissors together and all of this together. So do you roam through the house and how do you tackle it? One box at a time, one closet at a time, or do you just do fruit basket upset in the whole house?
Oh no, I don't do it all at once because then everything is in disarray, which sort of stresses me out. So what I try to do is I try to like you're almost gaining, and especially like with this whole virus thing going on, like you're gaining control of your life. So I try to do it like a piece at a time so that it makes sense. But then once you do it, you have to go through it again because you miss things. And you might be more emotionally ready the second time and the third time, so it's almost like an ongoing process.
Wow.
That you go through. So there's certain things that I was not ready to get rid of the first time, but then I said, okay, like I am. But also understanding and knowing where to get rid of things is really important because, for example, I didn't know about Facebook Marketplace until relatively recently. And that's a great place. It costs nothing. I was a little apprehensive at first because I was afraid of all these strange people coming to my house. But it's great. I've gotten rid of so many things, so many large things. And yeah, things that would have bothered me just to throw away. I didn't want to throw things away. But I do. I start with, like a closet or a box, or an attic. Attics are always,
I think an attic would be emotionally charged. I think that might be hard. Don't you think that the memories go in the attics? What did you find in attics?
Well, all right. I found boxes that I never even opened. So I had moved probably 9+ years ago now to this house, and I had boxes up there with things that I just never even unpacked. And there were things like, remember how we used to have those Norman Rockwell bells and, things like, we used to, I don't know, I used to collect a lot of, things that they're just not part of who I am anymore.
Home decor tchotchkes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so and again, there's nothing wrong with them, and they were expensive, but it's not part of what I envision myself using in the next even 30. You know what I'm saying? So I gave them away.
And who wanted them?
My sister.
Oh, you lucked out on that one.
Well, actually, I was going to donate it to Ditto, which in New Jersey is associated with, Eastern Christian, which is the school we went to. And, they actually have, they have full sets of china, for example, from, people's households and all these things that they sell. So I knew that they would take it, and that's where I was bringing it. And she grabbed it. So I said, okay. And she told me if she gets tired of them, then she's going to donate them there. So it's all good.
Good. I remember my sister getting rid of my grandma's teacup collection at her garage sale. And she put them out there, and I was at the garage sale, and I was like, what are you doing? And part of the problem was that some of those teacups got mixed up with mine because we used to go to our grandparents and pick out our teacups. And so I think some of the ones I picked out got mixed up with her. And, and at the time I had little kids, and I'm like, oh, I can't deal with it. And now I think about it, I'm like, oh, wonder what teacups they were and where they are. And it's a silly thing for me to even think because I have a million teacups. But every once in a while I look at a teacup and I think, I don't really like that. Why do I have that? Well, that was my grandma's. I have to keep it. My sister probably picked it out, and she had sold the one I picked, and it's just this really big emotional mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is emotional, right?
It's very emotional. So I'm interested in this home decor thing because think about how much we've changed. I remember I used to collect precious moments.
Yes,
Right.
me too.
So, yeah, and they were these little statues and I know people have collected Boyd's bears and all these things through the years and
Mhm.
you pay a lot of money for them and then
Right.
you don't get rid of them because there's
You
a
paid a
little
lot of
bit of
money
a
for 'em.
memory. Right, right. You paid a lot of money for them. And then at this point, who wants them? Who
Right,
wants precious moments? Like
right,
that's little dust collectors, right? You know? I'm sorry if
right.
anyone's watching this who still has them, but
I was gonna say, I'm glad you said that and not me,
I
but yes.
know. Most people, at least our younger generation, would never want them. There'd be no emotional attachment to
Yeah,
them. I mean,
right.
I liked precious moments so much. I remember having little figures on my clothing, like in junior high. There were I had these cute little things all over my clothes, and those were like the cutest clothes when they had those little faces on them. I don't know.
Now I still have a couple of precious moments ornaments.
Do you really? Okay.
Yeah,
But that makes
yeah,
sense because you can put it
yeah.
on your tree. Hmm.
Right. And
Yeah.
one is the one that I received when I was pregnant with my oldest son, with
Oh,
that has, like baby names.
okay.
So they're emotional.
They're
My
emotional.
country is emotional. So the
Right.
fact that they happen to be, it's just a couple, but they're emotional.
Yeah. What that's interesting too. Ornaments. Now me again being in this home decor thing, right? It's always about themed trees. And what's the deal this year? And last year it was woodland or, lodge
Right.
looking trees, right? I needed skis on my trees. Now in 5 years, I'm not going to want skis on my trees.
No, you
And
won't.
then what am I going to do with those ornaments? They're going to go
Right.
trotting off somewhere that may or may not take them, or they're going to end up in the landfills. So, does decluttering start to make you evaluate how you purchase and see it differently?
Yes. So a big part of it is reduce.
Okay.
And, I have things where I'll say, you know what? I would really like something new. Like I'm a little tired of this, but I will sort of stop myself from buying it just because, and all right, so I redecorated my wreath today that's on my front door, which sounds silly. But I have this one basic wreath. I used to have, you know, 10 different wreaths, right? Because, change season, change whatever. Wreaths take up a lot of space.
Yes.
So what I've done, this sounds great. I have this basic wreath and I decorate it. So right now, I put like little things that make it look springy. Before I had little eggs on it that made it look a little Eastery. And it takes up a lot less space. And that's what I've been doing. That's how I still get my, or I leave up a wreath that is fine. Is it exactly perfect? No. But it does, so from a decorating perspective, it definitely limits you a lot, because I am reducing. But there's things that you can reduce too that aren't emotional. Like, so for example, mail. You know, I don't get,
Hmm.
I don't get like, I don't get my bills or anything like that anymore. So all that paper is eliminated.
Okay.
Again, when my ex-husband died, not only did I get his mail sent to me because Matt, was the executor, and so all of his mail starts to come to me. All of his mother's mail, who had, came to, so I mean, and so I had to, like, I literally will have to send things back and say, like, especially all the donation places, all the charities, they'll send mail to you forever.
Wow.
So I literally have to write, return to sender deceased, because I will get stacks of mail like this, and until you finally do that, to eliminate. So, like eliminating, saying, okay, what's coming into the house? Do we need this? Um, and how can we stop it from even coming in the first place?
Wow.
But
So
also
that,
grouping things also helps.
okay. Like,
Because I'm not, I'm not likely to buy a scissors because I have 9. Or like if I put all, I have 6 cans of coffee, which my son thinks is just hideous because he's like, how, this is another thing, another generational thing, but he, like, unless it's completely, fresh ground and he has all these, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm good. So if it's on sale, I'm buying the maximum number I can. So I have 6 things of coffee.
Okay.
And I will say the toilet paper, fiasco where nobody can find. I had no issues because 2 years ago, there must have been big sales at BJ's. And so I had all the toilet paper I needed. So for the last 2 years, unless it's all together and you realize what you have, you think you need more.
Right.
And so, it's really important. And, the toilet paper, I knew I had that many, but.
You've saved a lot of money.
Well, yeah.
I spent $20 for 12 rolls of toilet paper yesterday, and probably it's not even soft. Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
And I sit there and I look down at my toilet paper. I'm like, let's see, 4 pieces right now. Okay, how long can that last me? I made 1 roll last 2 weeks. I'm like, okay.
The things we think of. Let's do that for our toilet paper.
So what's the difference then between hoarding and having clutter?
There's a fine line, probably, and I probably the so for example, I'll have 5, I have 5 or 6 large cans of coffee, but I know that within a month those will be gone.
Wow.
So, but if you are, like and I don't know. I mean, I can't. But if you're to the point where you can't see things or get through things, or it's just overwhelming. And I think that there's a point where like I know that even for me, it's like there's a point where I get uncomfortable. It's like I'm uncomfortable. I have too much stuff here, and I don't feel like I'm in control of it. I feel like it's controlling me, type thing. So then. I don't know if that's hoarding, but then, it's just a feeling of being uncomfortable.
Okay, so the last time I was at your house, I think it was the last time, I remember coming in through the basement and you had tons of clothes there because you were actually holding them for some ministry, right?
Yes. I don't do that anymore.
Okay.
They got a garage.
Oh, good. Okay.
They have a place now, their own place, to keep it all. So that's a good thing. Yes, good. It was crazy.
Yeah. So you were keeping other clutter.
I was keeping other clutter.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of this room in our church years ago, my dad's church, that Mrs. Vogel kept. It was just the clutter room, and she kept everything in there. And of course, she was raised during the Depression, right. And she had everything. She had clothes in there. She had everything. And if somebody went into that junk room, she'd have a fit because she's like, all that stuff is needed, so you had to clean it out when she wasn't there, and it was just like this big joke because that room was just floor to ceiling clutter. And I just think about that a lot. When I'm thinking about decluttering, I'm thinking about now who am I like here? So let's work through it. Now you've just totally decluttered your husband's house. I mean, like amazingly. And then you did a whole bunch of renovation on it and it's like a new place, right? So tell me about this.
So, this is some of the other stuff that I've learned is that, by painting and, or, we actually gutted 3 rooms, which means that 3 rooms had to be emptied. So by doing that, you're living in whatever space is left. And unless you want to be, living in a very awkward situation, you have to get rid of a lot of that stuff. So that kind of forced us to get rid of things that we might not have otherwise gotten rid of so quickly. Just because we were living in, basically the kitchen, one other room, and the bathroom, and the rest of it was being gutted. So that forced a lot of decisions to be made that might not have otherwise been made. Painting also, I find, forces issues because you end up, taking everything down, taking everything out, and what do you want to put back? So, I think a lot of the things that, we sort of just become accustomed, it's always been there, but really, what do you want to give that space to? Are you willing to give that space to that item, again? And the answer might be yes or no, but at least then you're making conscious decisions about it, because I think a lot of times we're in autopilot as to what's in our space.
Just like if the TV's always been there, that's where the TV goes and you don't even think about it.
Exactly.
Right.
And also having me come in, because I think a lot of things were the way things had always been, whereas I'm like, well, why is this? It's one of those things that, you may have the most hideous, situation, but because you're so used to it, you don't see it yourself. And somebody else comes in and says, well, why would you do that? It's like, I don't know. It's like a good idea at the time. So.
It's kind of like those houses that you'd go into purchase and they still had shag carpets and the orange and the green and the yellow wallpapers and the paneling. Remember that? And I don't think there are that many of them anymore, but it would be like a grandparent lived in them.
Still has it. I still have, but again, all right, so here's true confession. Yeah, just because, I have asbestos tile floors. So I absolutely, now that we've done, our house in Massachusetts, we want to upgrade, this house in many ways too. But there's asbestos tiles down there. It's not an easy thing. There's heat that, it's hot water underneath the floor, which is 60 years old, which is very nice. It works well. But the lifespan for it is about 40 years, which means that I have to, it's just not an easy, let's just take up the carpet and change it. I have to change the heating. I have to hire people in hazmat suits to take out the tile, so it's like, yeah.
Wow.
So that's what's there.
Wow. So what are you going to do? Now you're in New Jersey. You're there because you've already finished the one in your other home. And let's go back to the other home. It feels good, right? Does it feel good when you're in there?
Yeah, it's nice now. You walk in, you feel good about the space. And there's a lot of like empty space too. It's almost too much now because again, ultimately the plan is to combine two households. Which means that, for us, we are actually having a lot of excess space because, I'm sitting at my dining room table now. Where would that go? Well, if that went up there, it would go in the room that has only a piano in it right now. You know what I'm saying? So, and if the piano came down here, it would go over there. So those are the types of things. But each house ultimately is going to be emptier and kind of empty in a lot of ways.
Right. So what are you going to do to this house you're sitting in right now? What's your plan?
Well, we definitely want to paint. We want to refinish floors up here. We do have to do the work downstairs because, the asbestos tiles are fine as long as you don't try to dig them up or anything. Yeah, exactly. But we'll probably remove them. or have them removed, things like that. And the bathroom, really needs to be redone. Um, and then, this house also needs new appliances very badly.
So are you decluttered in there? So now you just need to do the renovation?
Um, no. Yes, no. So like the rooms would have to be emptied. I have more space to empty rooms. So, for example, the 2 bedrooms that used to be used by my sons that have now been emptied, there's basically a bed in there and a desk in each of them. But other than that, those rooms are empty. So, we could move furniture in there temporarily, things like that. There's room down in the, basement that could hold furniture while we were doing upstairs or downstairs. So we have more flexibility there.
Mm-hmm. So are you, I just lost my train of thought. I was, all right, just lost it. I hate when that happens. Yeah, I thought of it a second ago. I know. Facebook Marketplace. You've gotten rid of a lot of stuff, but you've just given it away, right?
I have.
Why didn't you sell it?
Well, I tried to sell one thing because I had this IKEA, bookshelf, and it really was I liked it, because it was this bookshelf, and we used it when we lived in the last house that we were in. We put a TV on it. We put, like I would actually put their clothes on it because there was, stack their clothes like they were in a store or something, their T-shirts and things like that. So I found it very handy. And so I figured anything IKEA that is assembled is worth a lot of money because it was a real pain to assemble it. So the fact that it was assembled, it's like, you should be paying me a lot of money for this. So I don't know. I think I paid $150 for it or something. I put it on for $75, but it just didn't, it didn't go. So I got to the point. But again, where I stop is the things like the desks where I spent a lot of money on it. That's where, you're like, do you really want to give this away?
Right. Unless you gave it away. Some of this stuff, what?
I painted.
Oh.
So for example, we had this old desk that was in the basement in Massachusetts, and you looked at it and you were like, oh, this is horrible. And I'm like, you know what? And it was huge and it was heavy and it was like, and so I said, you know what? I'm going to paint it. And I painted it brown and it looked really nice. And I posted it and it went like that.
Wow.
So
did you happen to have the paint, or did you have to go out and buy the paint to see?
No, I had the paint. Yeah. So I tried to that's the other thing from a decluttering perspective, when you're painting, using the same colors, and it doesn't have to be the exact same color, but it has to be, like you can't have 6 different rooms and 6 different colors. I basically had three colors that I used in the whole house in Lowell. And, it saves a lot of money. It saves a lot of space. And if I had leftover paint, you have this much paint. Well, I'm going to tell you, that much paint, you save it thinking, oh, someday I'm going to use this to touch that. You are not. Because I'm telling you, I got rid of 7 cans of paint that were so old that you can't use them anymore. Right. So you're not going to use it again. So use it up on paint the desk to give it away, and paint the cabinet to give it away. Like that's what I was doing.
That is a great tip, and I really like that tip thinking about home decor again, is because it used to be that we'd pick a room and paint a different color in every room. That was the thing you did because you were like, right. Oh, I don't have a purple room yet. Let me paint this purple. But then you can't bring things through, and there's no flow. Like
There's
even
no,
even we used to do with carpeting, right? Oh, this room has green carpet, and this room has tan carpet, and this room is orange carpet,
exactly.
and yeah, you're like walking into a patchwork quilt, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's even worse when you have children, because then, it's like, what color do you want? Oh, well, I would like, and it's
Right.
like, you know,
Yeah. I used to do murals on my kids' walls.
right,
We had a whole, like this is the beach room and this is the
right,
forest and
right, right.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
very interesting. And now things have gotten so much more streamlined that a lot of us are like neutrals, just
right,
neutrals. And then you
right.
can move things from room to room. You can move decor from room to room. So you're not adding to your clutter, you're just shuffling it around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can change things up just by, very simple decorations.
Right, right. Okay, so let's get specific here and talk about a few of my problems. Will you be my coach a minute?
I have enough of my own problems.
Well, I helped you with one of your problems, so being a perfect man. That's a problem. All right, so I have a barn full of crap. So that beautiful barn that I took your pictures in,
Yes.
and you're dancing, you would not be able to dance right now because the barn is floor to this high of Christmas trees and Christmas pillows and Christmas quilts, and it's mostly Christmas, but actually I do have a lot of fall in there too. And I have like closets just delegated to cloth pumpkins and autumn decor. What would you do?
Um, well, you have to go through it all,
Okay.
you know. And what I find is, and I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I was amazed at how much of my stuff is broken. It's like it's not going to repair itself.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of it. So
Mm-hmm.
if anything that's broken, that can come off, right in the beginning. Really, I really ask myself those hard, like, am I going to use this? Because if I'm not going to use it, if the answer is you paid a lot of money, that's not a good reason to keep it.
Okay.
So then and then I have to find a place to, bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, you tend to you're a little unique because you tend to use your stuff, or it
Mm-hmm.
seems that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, maybe, just look more critically at what you don't use, or if you don't use it,
Mm-hmm.
um, that type of thing. But, your situation, and I guess, my question for you is, like, is this it was not that way when I was there. So why is it this way now?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that I keep purchasing. I think that every year I get new ideas and there's new trends. And so I purchase more. And which is really dumb too, because it's money that I really shouldn't be using and don't have. And when nothing like a pandemic to make you think, what on earth do I have all this stuff for? Right. And why do I do that? I think the other thing is I had it all packed away underneath the stage. And because it was so solidly packed, there was not enough airflow and things were starting to get musty.
Okay.
And so now I don't want to put anything down there. So I just threw it in the barn thinking, well, I'll deal with this when it gets warm. And now it's warm and I have to decide how to deal with it. So,
Right.
because I want my barn back. I don't
Right.
want that to be a storage facility for Christmas trees.
Right.
But it makes me wonder too. I make this into a winter wonderland, which is really pleasant for a few months. But then I have to find a place for all that. And it's like some of my pillows really felt good a few years ago, but now I look at them and I think, well, why do I have that pillow? So I've started to get pillow covers, right?
Right.
So
I know
that
it's a
kind
good
of,
idea. I got that idea. I was like, oh, that's a
yeah.
good idea.
Yeah, I do that. And the other thing is I've changed curtains so much. You
Right.
see me, I come in every room and change it around every month. So, but there's a part of me that says, especially now, there's a part of me that says, what am I doing? Am I just like going in circles, spinning things? I know that there's value to it because it's exercising my creativity. It's putting me in a flow state, which is kind
Right.
of meditative. It keeps my blood pressure probably lower than it would be.
And it's
So,
almost like your job.
it's my job. It certainly
Like
is
this
my,
is your, like this is your job, decorating.
yes.
Now,
Yeah.
what you have to do though is figure out what to do with the things that you are finished with.
Right.
And if you could sell them, for example, and I always, all right, so here's my other analogy, because there's like the Dead Sea, and then is it the the Galilee Sea, whatever. But the one has, like it comes in and it goes out. The Dead Sea just comes in, which is why
Oh.
it's dead.
Oh.
And so it's like, as long as you can figure out a way, like what to do with, it's fine, I think, for you, especially given what you do,
Mm-hmm.
to bring stuff in. But what do you do with the stuff that you're finished with?
Right. And how do I know when I'm finished?
And how do you know when you're finished? Well, that only you can answer. Nobody
Right.
can answer that for you. Because there might be things that you like more than one season, or, for a few seasons, but
In a,
if you
in a,
don't use it, it's the same thing as with our closets. I mean, I'm always going through my closet saying, okay, do I need, like,
That's exactly what I was just going to say. In a
yeah,
way, we're both going to like interrupting each other to say it's like our clothing. Yeah.
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 Yeah, every woman in the world could understand. It's like, I remember when I first married Blake, I'm like, where am I going to put my clothes? I'm like, this is not going to cut it.
Well, and we could talk about clothing a second here too, because don't you have clothing that you bought, you never really wore much, but it was so pretty and you think it's so great, but now you're like, is it even in style anymore? Now I know you tend more to the classics, and I tend more to the trendy, but don't you have this clothing that you think, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And eventually, again, it all takes up space. What are you
Right,
going to give your space to? Yeah.
right. Oh.
I find that if I'm, cluttered, I don't even know what I have. And that's
Mhm.
also, I would think, what you're going, like, so for you, I would again group things by similar things and see what you have and almost do an inventory and, say, what do I, because you're going to say, oh, do I really need nine scissors? Maybe
Right.
I could give a few of these away, like 6 or 7. Um, but I mean, unless you know what you have and you really kind of confront what you have, yeah, it's hard to make decisions about it too.
Right.
Then you're dealing with the onesie twosies, but you're not dealing with the, okay, like this is, I I bought lights last year for my wedding. I had those lovely. Well, I misjudged how many lights I would need by like 10 boxes. And I don't know what I paid for them, but I'm sure I paid a lot of money for them. And so I literally have this huge box in my basement full of unopened lights. And I'm like, well, they're perfectly good. And I asked all my children, does anybody want lights? Nobody did.
Are they
What do you
patio
do?
lights?
Yeah.
So are they like the lights I use on my property with the black cords and the big bulbs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they have the big, they're really cute. All right.
Hold on to them.
Well, I was going to say, I'm like, these are perfectly good, but I have like a box of, a box of lights sitting in my basement. It's like, what am I going to do with them now?
You're going to bring them to my barn where they can sit with everything else. Okay,
and then you can make it all magical for people to have weddings there.
There you go. If we ever get out of our house and if people start having weddings outside of their living room, because I hear that's the trend.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, they should come at least to your barn, even with a couple of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay. This was fantastic. So to sum this all up, I just want to know, what are the questions you ask yourself decidedly, when you are staring at something in front of you? What are those questions, and how do you cut through all the emotional, mental clutter?
And keep in mind, that's why you always have to revisit it, because sometimes, you can't. I'll ask myself things like, does this mean a lot to my children, or does this mean a lot to me? So for example, here's another example. I had all of my children's school projects in probably 4 different boxes, because, someday I had the vision that I was going to give them this box of crap.
But you can't throw away your child's masterpiece,
I realized, and that's exactly it. I realized it doesn't mean anything to them. They don't even remember it. Similar to the way I reacted when my mother tried to give me my stuff. I'm like, what do I want with this stuff?
And let me guess, your stuff include your little vaccination records from the doctor, and your little this and your report cards.
So I realized, so that's why, it's like, does this mean anything to them? Is this something really that they want, or is this just something that means something to me that I would like them to have?
Okay.
And kind of try to take the emotion out of things, realizing it is just a piece of paper, it is, it's not a child I'm throwing away when I'm recycling all those photos, that type of thing. And I do ask myself the tough question, again, would I want my children to have to go through all this if something happens to me? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because that's what ends up having to happen.
Yeah.
So do I want that to happen? So that helps as well. Bringing stuff in, I have a Bowflex. I have a home for it identified, so that's a good thing. But I bought a Bowflex.
And you used it how often?
I never used it, but I bought it for my son,
okay, who
never really liked it. I spent a lot of money on it. There's a theme here. Mm-hmm. But it's like, where can, I would have definitely asked myself better questions, perhaps at the time, because if you bring it in, how are you going to get rid of it?
Right.
Mm-hmm. We bring stuff in with the thought that, oh, this is great. It doesn't last forever. So at some point, it has to go. Mm-hmm. How are we going to get rid of it? And there are ways to get rid of things, but you do have to work at it. It takes work to get rid of things. It takes a lot of work to get rid of things.
Right. And how much of our life do we want to give to that acquiring and getting rid of and acquiring and getting rid of and acquiring and getting rid of? What else could we have done with that time?
Right. Right.
Wow. That's a really good point. I even think about a time I went to Salvation Army and the guy went through my stuff and said, no, we won't take this. We won't take this. We won't take this. And I said, that's a perfectly good blah, 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 blah. And he's like, we don't want it. And then I have this thing. What do I do? Oh, this is in my barn. What do I do with it? So, yeah.
Right. Well, and there's certain things, like you said, I tried to get rid of TVs, and they don't want TVs,
right,
except that are 2 years or less. Well, I would like a TV that's 2 years or less as well. But,
right.
For those I had to bring to the recycling center, so there's certain things that will be taken by the recycling center. I found certain things will be taken by, like, the junk, like pallets. We had pallets. You get those big pallets if you ever get anything large delivered.
Right.
What do you do with them? But those are very valuable. Lots of people want those. So those are relatively easy to get rid of.
Yeah, they're hard to find, actually.
Yeah.
Because we've looked at finding them, and every time we go to get them, then they're gone already. Yeah.
Right.
Because there's so many building projects out of pallets.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are very, very much in demand. But, as an individual, what do you want with a pallet?
Right. Right. Wow. And a lot of places you have to pay to get rid of things. Like these recycling centers, usually you have to pay to get rid of your electronics and everything.
Oh, see, our town will take it. So.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, okay. It is nice. Yeah. And yeah.
Wow.
I realize, living up in Massachusetts part of the time, it's like how flexible our garbage situation is here, because they'll pretty much right now I have a bedpost out front. I have that's broken. I have a chair that was probably 30 years old sitting in the basement that was broken. I'm like, we're getting rid of it. That's it.
Right. So. Right. Yeah. No, up here in New England, they drop them off, unfortunately, in woods and state parks and along the side of the road. They'll just leave a couch and they just dump it.
That's awful. Yeah.
It is. It's terrible. It's terrible.
You would be surprised. So for example, we had 4 old bikes. And when I say old bikes, like they were rusted, they were just, like I looked at them and I'm like, I posted them on Facebook Marketplace, kind of with these are in rough condition. I think that was the word I used. I'm like, these are in rough. I had at least 20 people looking for them. They wanted them.
But did they want them to paint them to put them outside their house with a basket and flowers on it?
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
they were perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But they came, I could have given away those 20 times over. Because they weren't rideable.
Right. No, I bet they wanted them for outside decor.
Maybe.
Or ghost bikes. You know how they put where someone died when they're riding a bike, they put a white bike in that spot, like it's almost like a tombstone.
Oh.
That's a little more morbid, but yeah, they do that. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of uses for old bikes.
I guess so.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Sue, I thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I've learned a lot. And I'm feeling
I always learning too.
I know. Well, I know that when we went out to lunch last time and you were, telling me all the stuff you get rid of and how you get rid of it, I'm like, oh, I got to do that. And since now I'm in the house, I'm looking around and I'm like, oh, stuff. So yeah, but I don't want to get rid of anything I like. What?
You just have to get started.
Yeah. Well, this is really good.
Once this, pandemic ends, I'll come help you.
Good. That's the other final best tip is get a friend to help you, because you would look at it and go, well, what do you want that? What do you got 10, 15 of these? And I'd be like, but I might need it. Yeah. So that's really helpful. Thank you, Sue.